into complete irrelevance, or are we going to do something big? Georgia Tech elevated Brent Key as their head coach. Colorado hired Coach Prime, who's going to wear a gold chain on the sideline. Deion Sanders, 55-year-old Pro Football Hall of Famer that everyone knows, celebrity coach from the Aflac commercials with Nick Saban. He's the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes now. It's a great move. I mean, they could fall flat on their face, but I'm not going to criticize them because at least they tried and they made an effort. And Hutton, here's the thing I know about Deion Sanders. He's going to get players.
Yes.
He is.
He will.
I know we've got a video in regards to this. He's hoping most of this roster leaves in the transfer portal because he's going to replace each and every single one of them with guys out there who are probably contacting him or his son via social media right now that's interested in playing for Colorado. That wouldn't have happened if they went out there and hired, the next great FBS defensive coordinator.
Here is prime time. Deion Sanders addressing the locker room, the roster for the first time, where he says, hey, hit the portal because we need the room for other guys coming in.
We got a few positions already taken care of because I'm bringing my luggage with me. And it's Louis. I'm coming. It ain't going to be no more of a mess that these wonderful fans, the student body, and some of your parents have put up with for probably 2 decades now. I'm coming. And when I get here, it's going to be changed. So I want y'all to get ready to go ahead and jump in that portal and do whatever you're going to get. Because the more you jump in, the more room you make. Because we bring kids that are smart. Say that, smart. Smart. Tough.
Again, that's not your usual introduction to the team.
He dropped Louis Vuitton in the message.
My luggage
I didn't
Louis.
catch that the first time. My luggage is Louis, by the way. And no one reacted, so he just kept going. Okay, so we'll move on. Clearly, high fashion luggage doesn't interest you kids, so I'll move on. I'm looking at the faces in the crowd and the reaction, and while everyone is listening to him and they're being attentive, I'm also probably seeing a lot of people that are going to transfer.
They already knew.
Yeah, I mean, they know either they're getting replaced or they're going to want to go play somewhere else because they got no shot now with Deion Sanders based on what's been going on at Colorado.
It's a 5-year deal. Buyout is $8 million after year 3. It's $15 million after year 1. Just to look around and look at that. His buyout at Jackson State, Chad, $300,000 is what Colorado will pay Jackson State for their head coach.
So Colorado would probably pay Jackson State what, $900,000 to $1 million?
Probably, yeah. I mean,
there?
TSU is getting $1.5 million to go to Notre Dame next September. So, yeah.
I would like to see, because Deion Sanders was big on the pulpit of HBCUs and their value and helping them with his star power while he was the coach there. I really hope he puts his money where his mouth is and only schedules them as FCS opponents while he's at Colorado. He's going to have a big say over that. I know schedules are made out in advance, but I hope you start seeing Jackson State and Grambling and some of these schools on the Colorado schedule where some of that money he's making to buy that Louis luggage will then go back to the HBCUs that he just left in Jackson State. I'm not criticizing him for leaving. I mean, he did great things for Jackson State, but it would be cool to kind of pay that forward now, having gotten your start there.
And I think he will have those opportunities to schedule that, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, and it makes sense for him to do it too, because again, he's trying to build back the program with wins, and you can pad those numbers a bit there. And he says, hey, one thing we're going to do is win. It may not be immediate. I'm not going to put a timetable on it, but we will win. It's going to happen. And it's hard to disagree with him as he enters the Pac-12 schedule.
I can tell you this. I got a bag right here. It's not Louis.
It's not, but it's filled with cash.
It's the exact opposite
filled with
of
cash,
Deion.
though.
Definitely not
Chad
Louis.
doesn't believe in banks.
I think I got this at Office Depot.
Headlines next on OutKick 360.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself. just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the second hour is here. OutKick 360 rolls on. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. The set, very festive. We've got the Yeehaw and the Old Smoky cherries here, the green and red.
We got a nutcracker. We've got a Christmas tree.
Yeah. Maybe it'll bear gifts. Don't know.
Doubtful. But, you know, we can cross our fingers and hope.
Chad, you and I, we made a pact with me, you, PK, probably like 10 years ago now, that we stopped doing gifts for each other. It was like, guys, do we really have to do gifts?
Yeah,
do we need to exchange?
It was a weird time when we were giving each other gifts, and I'm thinking it was like a 2-year span maybe.
Yeah,
early.
roughly the first 2 years. Yeah, and then we all looked around like, yeah, we don't have to do gifts.
Yeah,
and there was a huge burden lifted. It was like, perfect. This is perfect.
I get so uncomfortable if someone gives me anything.
Yeah.
Right? And then you just immediately feel guilty. if you don't have the gift in
Right.
return immediately, right then and there, that I just because it makes me feel so uncomfortable, I just choose to not give any gifts.
I mean, it sounds horrible, but I really don't want your gift card.
I will wish you Merry Christmas. I will ask about your family and your plans and be courteous in that way, and I legitimately care about what you're up to. If you work with me or if you're around me, but
Yes.
I'm not going to take the extra step and go out and shop for and or buy a gift. I can't bring myself to do it. I apologize to all of you who know me, but you will not be getting a gift this year. Unless you live in my house. If you live in my house, you will be gifted something. Everyone else, you can forget about it.
Yeah, if
Just
you get a
don't
gift
even
from Chad,
think about
you're
it.
a lucky human being.
Yes.
Scott Satterfield, hired by Cincinnati to replace Luke Fickell. An interesting hire here, Chad, because this is who they have now tabbed to take them into the Big 12. And, John Cunningham, the AD at Cincinnati, was saying, hey, we are a destination job. We don't want to be a launching pad for coaches that come through here. And that's fine. I mean, Cincinnati's been to the playoff already. I mean, they are a brand, and rightfully so. But this is a hire that I feel like is exactly what he was describing a couple of weeks ago, which is they want somebody that's there for the long haul, that wants to be, wants to win Big 12 championships and play for a college football playoff berth. But I don't see this as a hire where, Scott Satterfield's now using this to propel him somewhere else. At least that's my initial view of it. And, I mean, what he's done at Louisville, and it wasn't great this year. What he's done at Louisville has exceeded expectations versus when he got there.
Well, so his record at Louisville is 25-24.
What was he, 7-5 this year?
Yeah, he's a game over 500, but he was 8-5 when he initially took over.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went to 4-7, then 6-7, going to a bowl, and now 7-5 this year. So not bad, not really good either. He's on the hot seat this year. Early on, when they get blown out by Syracuse, before they pulled it together, they were actually ranked in one of the college football playoff rankings, 25th, I believe, at one point. So they rebounded well and played well, even at times, without their star quarterback, Malik Cunningham. There's two sides to this whole story and narrative with this. If you're Cincinnati and you are a Bearcats fan or alum, and you are told, hey, we're going to go rob Louisville, who is an hour and a half down the road, of their head coach, it looks terrific on paper. Just in general. We hired Louisville's coach. They're already in a Power 5 conference. We're going to one. And we are so big time at Cincinnati, we can go and rob them of their coach. Looks great until you really look behind it and see, well, he was on the hot seat. He's probably not getting a contract extension offer of any kind at Louisville, and he's 25-24 at Louisville. That part of it doesn't look as good for Cincinnati, but I think overall it's a nice sign for their program that they could make this happen.
Yeah, I mean,
even if it's a guy that is attempting to get out before trouble really starts at his current job.
So he was at App State whenever they made the jump to FBS.
Right.
And, that's kind of in line with what Cunningham's talking about here as they move into the Big 12. But also keep in mind, they did Louisville a favor. They're paying $3.5 million to buy him out. And if Louisville, I mean, if we're thinking the same thing here, Chad, early next season, if he's on the hot seat and things go the same way they started this year, they probably have an interim coach they're ending with next year, and they're paying his buyout.
Now,
right?
at Appalachian State, Scott Satterfield was 47-16 and 3-0 in bowl games. Yeah, I thought when you were saying, if you're thinking what I'm thinking, is Jeff Brom now ready to go home and coach Louisville?
Well,
because you use some of that buyout money and you go make a huge offer to Jeff Brom. I don't know that he'll do that, because I'm sure he's been there long enough now at Purdue and had enough success.
But the timing might be right.
You want to stay in the Big Ten, but I don't know what Jeff Brom ultimately wants. That's his alma mater. He's from Louisville. He went to a prestigious Louisville Trinity High School, prestigious high school in Louisville. Maybe he wants to go there and coach out his days as long as he can at his alma mater.
Well, see, now that's interesting, because now you can flip the same script on if you told Louisville fans that Cincinnati was going to come in and take their coach and you were going to replace your coach with Jeff Brom. right? Your 500 coach with Jeff Brom, that's a home run,
If
too.
the replacement is Jeff Brom, Louisville fans
it's a massive
would get
upgrade.
on whatever that highway is between Louisville and Cincinnati, heading that direction, and throw a parade the entire way down that highway for, hit Satterfield to get out of there.
And think
They'll
about
lead the parade.
The perception of both situations. Brom, in theory, would be taking over a 500 job where expectations are what they are, but he could come in and build off of that and have success pretty quickly. Meanwhile, Satterfield's headed to Cincinnati where, Luke Fickell, the bar is set pretty high, no matter what conference you're playing in.
Yeah.
So Satterfield's got to there's no coincidence they're announcing this on day one of the transfer portal being open. He's got to go to work fast.
Well, here's the other thing about going to work fast. These two match up in a bowl game against each other.
Yeah, right out of the gate here, right?
The Fenway Bowl is December 17th, so it's a week from Saturday. They play head-to-head in Fenway Park.
It's Kerry Combs as the interim, I believe, too, right?
Louisville. Look, I believe that this is one where Satterfield will just be completely out of it.
Yeah.
He'll probably do an interview with the broadcast team, but even that interview is awkward.
Yeah, hopefully there's some recruits in the Boston area he can go see.
The team that you just left is playing the team you don't know yet, but you're about to coach, and you're in the booth doing an interview is going to be. I'll be watching that game just simply for that.
Chad, quarterbacks, transfer portal, there are plenty of them, plenty of movement today with all the different Power 5 quarterbacks who did not meet expectations or are looking over their shoulder knowing that a younger guy's about to play and replace them. They're moving around. DJ at Clemson, Leary at
Devin
NC
Leary's
State.
now in the portal. Keaton Slovis announces he's in the portal. Simultaneous to that, Phil Jerkovic, who was thought to be a pro prospect, who was originally at Notre Dame, transferred to Boston College. He is now going to Pitt to be their next quarterback to replace Keaton Slovis. Spencer Sanders, Oklahoma State, is now in the portal also. And I'm blanking on his name now. The kid at Western Kentucky, who's second in the country in passing yards or total offense, led one of the best offenses in America.
Reed?
Yes, Austin Reed. He is now in the portal also. So a lot of movement in that portal.
Yep, and we saw the changing of the guard for Clemson a couple times this season, right? But it's clear where Dabo's headed at the position. He should have done it earlier,
Yeah, we said that all year.
I thought it really held them back.
We saw a lot more spark in the offense.
Good
with
team, not
Klubnik
great
in.
team. Good team, not great team. Anthony Richardson, meanwhile, is headed pro.
Graham Mertz, by the way, also Wisconsin's.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
3 or 4 year starter headed in the portal. I know that because Brooke, our producer, was very excited about that as a Wisconsin fan. She was not upset. She's excited that he's leaving. Some of these guys, I'm always curious, is it just Power 5 to Power 5? Cade McNamara, for instance, we know where he's going. He's going from Michigan to Iowa. So he's going from one division in the Big Ten to another division, but it's not a huge step down. You stay in the Power 5, you stay in the Big Ten. A guy like Mertz, does he just go to another Power 5 and start right away, or do you go down a level to a Group of 5 team and start to know that you're going to get playing time? I'm always, because there's so many quarterbacks in the portal right now, I don't think all of them are good enough to just go somewhere else to the Power 5 school and immediately start. Some of them are. Spencer Sanders, for example, is probably going to go to a Power 5 school and start, would be my estimation of where he's going to end up.
Well, that's it's the unknown of, okay, so what does Kentucky have? We saw what Kentucky had against South Carolina, and it wasn't great. But without Levis, where are they turning? Like, what level of Power 5 are some of these guys going to end up with? Look, Tennessee's going to have a guy that they find in the portal that'll come in and at least compete against Milton, right?
Yeah, to me, it all comes down with a school like Tennessee. All these schools have a freshman quarterback on their roster. Mm-hmm. So Tennessee's got a guy named Taven Jackson, who's a 4-star freshman. He got hurt, broke his collarbone this season in a game. And do you trust him to be the guy that competes with your veteran guy while you're bringing in another quarterback, or do you need to add a depth piece that could maybe come in a pinch and play for you if the starter doesn't work out early on? All the decisions that we don't have to make, but all these college coaches are looking at. I'll give you a name for Kentucky that makes a lot of sense, was the one we just talked about, Spencer Sanders. That's one I'm going after if I'm the Wildcats.
Well, for the up-tempo offense, what about Allen from Western Kentucky.
Yeah. Reed, you're saying?
Oh, Reed. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that would make sense, and it's a short drive.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just based on the pace of the offense and what Western was doing offensively.
And we don't know what Kentucky's going to ultimately do offensively,
right?
Because they fired their offensive coordinator, but one to watch.
Anthony Richardson has declared for the NFL draft out of Florida. I just don't see him. I mean, I see a developmental quarterback, yes. I just don't see him as a guy that is just polished enough to immediately go in and start in the league next year. I know many people view him that way with the traits, the skill set, and he was certainly being lauded as that back in September. But Chad, 142 quarterbacks threw at least 50 passes this college football season. Anthony Richardson ranked 127 out of 142 for completion percentage. That's all you need to know. That's nothing consistent with his game. He was consistently inconsistent. And that's my biggest issue with Richardson right now as a pro prospect. Meanwhile, we're going through all these different quarterbacks. It's like, why not stay at Florida and run it back?
Yeah, and I'm just looking at, I'm at Walter Football right now, site I go to for draft projections. They've got Richardson 5th amongst quarterbacks in this draft.
By the way, that stat is for conference games. I'm looking at the best talent against the best talent. And he was 127 out of 142 in conference for quarterbacks throwing at least 50.
But now I've got two different projections up. The top 5 quarterbacks in this draft. Number 1, C.J. Stroud. Great. Get it. Bryce Young, number 2. Absolutely. Understand that. Will Levis, 3.
Okay.
Don't get it. Tanner McKee from Stanford, 4th. I know he's a huge kid, 6'6", 230, pro style. I didn't watch a lot of Stanford this year because they were terrible, quite frankly, and not extremely relevant. So don't know as much about him. And then Anthony Richardson at number 5. Yep. Anthony Richardson ahead of Jaden Daniels, ahead of Hendon Hooker, ahead of Jaron Hall from BYU. I don't get it. With Levis and Richardson right now, I just don't really understand the love with either of those guys. Anthony Richardson athletically could do the job. He just has a long way to go. Just extremely raw right now as a passer.
Well, and what makes all of this really intriguing is the number of franchises that are going to need quarterbacks in the first round. I mean, if you start looking at the top 15 picks, and even further than that, there are 7, 8 teams right now that they either know they need a quarterback or they're about to, based on whatever their veterans are going to do this offseason. Like, for instance, Brady and the Bucks. Like, no one's talking about the Bucks next year yet, but they've got to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. Now, some of them are going to sign and move on or hit the trade and do different things, but I mean, you've got to start building through the draft, and it's a tough pool right now. I think the portal has something to do with it, with the development of these guys, but the overall movement of the portal is far more interesting right now than the talent that's coming out for the draft. And even with Stroud and Young, there will be plenty of questions with them, but at least you're more certain about where they are in their overall game and their consistency. And some of these guys, not so much. Hit us up at OutKick 360. Coming up, we recap Week 13 across the NFL. We start with the Bengals taking down the Chiefs, but also looking around, Chad, Deshaun Watson in his debut, A.J. Brown and the Eagles dominate the Titans, and the Giants and the Commanders, we mentioned, they're playing twice now over the next 3 weeks. They'll play again in Week 15. They've been flexed to Sunday Night Football because that, in essence, is going to come down to a win, and probably they're the wild card team, the winner there. And that's because they tied yesterday.
Because they're the winner because there was no winner yesterday.
Yeah, and a couple of other teams that I felt like really took a step forward. Maybe not playoff caliber, but they're showing us something. And one team in particular that refuses to actually do anything that says, hey, we're playoff worthy. That's next on OutKick 360.
Coach Dan Mullingus joining us tonight, talking about the CFP rankings that are out, Championship Saturday that is coming up. Happy to have him join us on OutKick. Coach, let's get into it with the rankings that came out this past Tuesday, and we look at the top three. I think we can all agree on the top three. 4 USC, right? They slide right in after the win this past weekend. They're sitting in a prime spot going into the championship Saturday against Utah. Ohio State 5. So let's break down the first 5 to me. Do you think that they got it right numerically, just putting Georgia at 1, Michigan 2, or does it really matter right now?
Well, I think it gets tricky, and I think they've left themselves some opportunity. I think you could have easily gone Michigan at 1 just because of the quality of win. If you look at the great win right now, Georgia's great win over Tennessee. They were a great team. They won at home, won pretty convincingly, and that's their only top 10 win. Now, if you look at the big picture thing, I guess Michigan you can throw out. They won at Ohio State against a great team, equal team. But they also won against Penn State, who the committee seems to value extremely high. So I think you could easily make the argument to have put Michigan at number 1. And I think they could still flip it after this weekend with 1 and 2. I think that's a pretty easy sell right there. TCU at 3, I think is very easy. I think TCU's in no matter what. Even if they lose, I think they'll still make the playoff at this point. And that gets you then down to 4 and 5, which in thinking about it, in reality, you could have easily gone with Ohio State at 4 because you're giving them credit for the Penn State win, and you're giving them credit for if you're going to go that way, you just you put them in the categories. Okay, let's compare USC then Ohio State 4 and 5, the teams you're next to. That you give them, they had they both had a Notre Dame win. USC has a loss to a Utah team who's just outside of the top 10, where Ohio State's loss is to a number 2 team. The Ohio State, again, I think Penn State's ranked way too high, but if the committee's going to put them there and you go through the reality of it, Ohio State probably should be at 4. Now, that being said, the win this weekend by USC, to me, over a Utah team, which is the only team that beat them, would then jump them over Ohio State, and that would solve some of your problems. So I think they just honestly, it's done out of convenience, because I think if you really think of it, I think you really could have gone Ohio State 4, USC 5, but then the convenience of it is. Why have to flip them after they win their championship, which would be easy to do, but they don't even have to worry about that.
Would the biggest thing would be, okay, USC winning the Pac-12 championship. Okay, now we can slide them into 4, even with Ohio State that maybe could have been at 4. Would that have been like the way to go? Like if they were trying?
I think they could have easily done it. I think they just probably said, hey, why even cause the headache? Put USC at 4. If they win, they get to stay there. If everybody wins out, nothing changes. If one of those, if USC loses, it's easy. Ohio State's the team we're picking to replace them. And then I think TCU's a lock. Now would TCU go to 4 and Ohio State to 3 possibly? But I think TCU's a lock.
OutKick 360 rolls on from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine with Chad Withrow. I'm Jonathan Hutton. The crew making it happen for us. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network. You can follow us at OutKick 360. And if you miss portions of the show, hit the podcast. You can download it just by searching OutKick 360 wherever you find your audio. We've got SEC Mike who will join us in about 40 minutes or so. We'll run through the bowl matchups and more.
And if you're on the YouTube, you can OutKick 360, search us out there and watch on YouTube. I am inside the chat and doing the best I can.
Chad is in you.
To chat with you during the show. But I'm not the best multitasker. So in order for me to make sure that I'm paying attention to everything Hutton's saying, yes. I can't spend too much time in the chat typing back with what you're saying. But I will chime in here and there. And it's a lot of NFL conversation in today's chat.
What's driving it?
The Titans and John Robinson, Bengals, Chiefs, long conversation about Joe Burrow. That's where I am right now.
Okay, so
again, I'm not trying to take too much attention away from you at this show, so I'm just kind of seeing pieces of the chat.
So with Burrow and the Bengals, think about how they had the go-ahead touchdown drive yesterday against the Chiefs. It's not like they're throwing it deep. The first 3 passes are check downs to Samaje Perine, and they hit a couple of others as well. But then, Higgins steps up and makes some big plays as well. And, of course, we'll get to the 2-minute deal where they were able to run out the clock. But, I mean, they just take what's there, and they are making the positive yardage. They stay ahead of the sticks. Defensively, bend but don't break. And against a Chiefs offense, basically the goal is to just have the ball last and to eat the clock and not allow Mahomes to have the football back to go have a game-winning drive. Because, I'm sitting there watching that game. Chad, we're here at 6th of Peabody, and the clock's winding down, and I'm thinking, man, if Mahomes gets this ball back, they're going down and they're scoring. Like, you just had the feeling the Chiefs are going to go have a game-winning drive. And then that pass to T. Higgins across the middle where Burrow somehow fits that in, and somehow Higgins caught that football.
Yeah.
Tremendous job in the clutch by that team over the last 2 weeks. And this is yet again why the Bengals are right up there with the teams in the AFC. Despite their slow start and their inconsistent play through the October schedule, this is a team you do not want to face right now because they believe that they are the team you don't want to face right now.
And, looking in their division also, with Lamar Jackson getting dinged up in that game,
yep.
The Browns with Deshaun Watson, he's beyond rusty. So it's going to take time before, he's Deshaun Watson again.
It's really them or Baltimore, yeah.
It's them or Baltimore, but then Baltimore, the exact opposite of Cincinnati. That clutch play that they make against a great Chiefs team to win the game, that's been the problem for the Ravens, is closing out close games and making those types of plays. They can't do it. They have an inability to do those things. So with the protection Joe Burrow is getting now for the Chiefs, I really think that I'm elevating them into that group with Buffalo and Kansas City in the AFC as an absolute powerhouse that has a great chance at getting back to a Super Bowl.
This is the thing about the Bengals have a tougher schedule, much tougher schedule than the Ravens. And the Bills have a very difficult upcoming schedule because they've got the Jets Sunday, then they face Miami. And both teams have beaten the Bills already this season. And then it's on to Cincinnati. So the Bills still have to play the Bengals. Meanwhile, and I think they end the season in the division against the Patriots. Meanwhile, you've got the Chiefs that only have one opponent with a winning record remaining on their schedule currently, and that's Seattle. So Kansas City is still in a really good spot.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to watch the Bengals play and not look at them week to week as we're projecting and say, yeah, they can win this game. They're going to win this game. And there's only like 2 or 3 teams in the AFC you really feel that about. And it's KC, Buffalo, and now it's Cincinnati. It's not Baltimore. It's not Tennessee. It's not Miami. The Bengals are there. And regardless of their combined record, I think the Bills and Bengals, whenever they meet, they'll have like a combined record over a stretch against their opponents of 33-19. That's their overall record they're going to be facing. The Chiefs don't have that. But what the Bengals and Bills do, they have the ability to beat the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And we've seen that this year already.
I don't think that the Browns had the ability to beat anyone yesterday other than the Houston Texans based on how poor they looked on
Maybe
offense
Denver
with Deshaun Watson. Maybe. But that game's 5-0 until they return a punt for a touchdown to make it 7-5. Not a single offensive touchdown. They had the fumble return for a touchdown. They had the punt. It was a bad day. And you got Deshaun Watson out there throwing worm burners, 3 yards short of every intended receiver. That's not good. We knew there. I mean, it's 2 years.
700 days. Exactly 700 days between games.
There was going to be some issues. I still was expecting better than that.
I thought they would have some well-schemed plays for him, because he's been out there on the practice field for a couple of weeks. I thought we would see a couple of wrinkles added in to their offense. And this was just more or less Nick Chubb, who, you're right, it was an awful game. He was the best player on the field offensively for the Browns, and I think he rushed for 80 yards. It was a grind. And if not for the defense, did you see the one that the ball just popped out it was a quarterback sneak or a quick
Kyle
run or something?
Allen, I think, was trying to sneak it out of the end zone.
Yeah, and it just popped out, and the defensive back picks it up and goes in for a 2-yard return for a touchdown. It was that type of day in Houston. And overall, he's booed, but he's going to face that. I didn't think it was anything close to what an atmosphere that we thought or would have projected it would have been whenever they announced the suspension and he was coming back in Week 13. Wasn't close.
There was one sign.
And I don't blame Texans fans for not showing up, by the way.
No, of course not. There was one sign in the crowd that one of the 4,000 Texans fans that actually showed up to that atrocity of a game held up that said, I'd rather the Texans be 1-9-1 than have Deshaun Watson as our quarterback. And of course, that is the record of the Houston Texans.
And now they're on their way to the number 1 overall pick. They can have their choice. A.J. Brown and the Philadelphia Eagles, we really should say Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles, take out the Tennessee Titans yesterday at Lincoln Financial Field. It was a tight game for about a quarter. And then it was 14-10, and the Eagles never looked back. It was a terrible offensive performance yet again for the Titans, and a very balanced attack for the Eagles offense that could do whatever it wanted to do. The game plan didn't call for running the football. And the Titans tried to take away Hurts as a runner. They did that, but they could not take away Hurts, the passer, who distributed the football to multiple receivers. And it was A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith that had a great day. Defensively, the Eagles' defense were the more physical group up front compared to the Titans' offensive line. And this is Philly preparing itself for any type of matchup that you can throw at them. They have plenty of answers, and there's not many areas on their team that are massive question marks. There's not one thing you doubt about what they can or cannot do, and Philly's ready for a Super Bowl run.
You like Philly right now in the NFC. Is it a big gap between Philly and Minnesota?
It's not a big gap, no.
But I do think there's a gap.
There's a drop off. I still think the Christmas Eve game between the Eagles and Cowboys determined the best team in the NFC.
Yeah.
And that's just around the corner too. That's going to be a great game.
I thought that Jalen Hurts was capable of having a breakout year based on what Philly's done around him. With that offensive line, now adding A.J. Brown to Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert in a good passing attack before that. Did not expect Jalen Hurts to jump up to be MVP leader in December, Jalen Hurts. This has surprised me. 390 yards against the Titans defense yesterday. Even though I expected the Eagles to win comfortably, surprises me with Jalen Hurts. He has been terrific and has exceeded all my expectations coming into the season.
And really, the difference factor, I think, for the Eagles, there are certain players that you just know are going to show up and perform well. Jalen Hurts leads that category. Like if we're just starting to name their team. A.J. Brown, though, gives them that element at wide receiver now, too. They're always going to run the football well if they want to. If the game plan calls for it, the Eagles are going to run the football well. The question is, whenever you get to the playoffs and you have that shut down, you face a Bucs defense last year, for instance, that is the number one team in football at stopping the run. Do you have a plan B that's capable of keeping up with some of the top offenses in the league? And now Philly does. And they also have a very physical defense, a very talented secondary. Special teams is fine. They had some good returns yesterday. I really like the makeup of their roster. And you're right, it does start with their O-line. Their O-line is legit. And even on a day where they had how many penalties?
12.
12 and what?
Seven of the 12 were false starts.
From the O-line. Even on a day like that, they can still win with their B- effort in certain areas. They're very impressive. And A.J. Brown, I mean, insult to injury was his performance yesterday.
I thought he could have done better than I know the touchdown got wiped off the board after the review, but then he scored on the very next play anyways. But if you've been storing something up for that long, to take the towel out and whip the goalpost,
I don't know what that was.
I feel like you could have been a lot more creative with the touchdown celebration. So that's really my only critique of A.J. Brown's game yesterday was he had that long to prepare for this spiteful celebration after his first touchdown against his old team. And instead of mocking the Titans in some way or, faking a signing or a trade or something, he decides to take his towel out and whip the goalpost.
Yeah, I didn't understand it either.
Didn't like it.
Chad, I like Mike White as the quarterback of the Jets, even though they lose yesterday to the Vikings. I'm going to hit the Vikings in a moment, but the Jets are just a different team with Mike White at quarterback. A week ago, he threw for, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just yesterday, he threw for 369 yards, and he scored the Jets' only touchdown. Great job by making the move when they did from Zach Wilson to Mike White, because they were winning games with Wilson. They weren't scoring points with him, but the move allows them a little life, a little breathing room, some oxygen. And the Jets right now are a playoff team because they made the move at quarterback. Meanwhile, they've got to be able to have a much higher efficiency in the red zone. They reached the red zone against the Vikings 6 times. They scored 1 touchdown yesterday. They've got to find extra points there and help out what is a great defense for New York. They're facing a Minnesota offense that is capable, like Philly. I would put them in the same category. They can beat you different ways. Dalvin Cook and Madison in the backfield. Meanwhile, you have Cousins, who protects the football and can distribute it to the best wide receiver in football, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Now they have tight end play with Hawkinson. They have plenty of options there and a defense that is good, not great. But yesterday they were great in the red zone. That's the difference. They win 27-22.
2 interceptions, really the only blemish on Mike White's day. He was great. I've been thoroughly impressed with the offense now with him. And it was so sporadic with Zach Wilson was the problem. He wasn't always terrible, but it's light years different, at least through 2 games, with consistency and knowing what to expect from Mike White. Again, 2 games. Let's see how it progresses. But Hutton, you said it. I mean, they look like a playoff team right now with Mike White.
Yeah, and even in a loss, I'm saying that. And the Vikings, by the way, they continue to win close games. They were not doing that last year. They were 2-5 in games that were decided by a possession or less. This season, they're 5-0 in games decided by 6 points. And 9 of their 10 wins now, Chad, decided by 8 or less. And they're finding ways to close out games. They get the ball to their best players. Commanders and Giants, interesting matchup. And the Giants end up getting, I think, some momentum with Saquon Barkley, who played well. But here's Taylor Heineke. Giants are leading this game. They're down 20-13. The Commanders are with 2 minutes left, and he converts a 4th and 4 from the Washington 27-yard line where he's pressured, he scrambles, he goes out and finds throws a prayer to Curtis Samuel, and they go down and tie the game. It ends up being a tie. But a loss was so much more damage would have been caused by that, and Heineke's the one that led the way and came up with a clutch performance, albeit a tie, a clutch performance that now sets up, after this coming week, another matchup against the Giants on Sunday Night Football where you get a feeling that it's for a wild card spot.
So ridiculous that this game is played so close together. And with one of the teams having a bye next week. So one team plays the same team 2 games in a row, even though there's a bye in between. I forget which one. It's the Giants or the Commanders, I feel like, are off next week.
And this is the final week for byes, too.
Now we'll play the same team 2 times in a row, which I understand it's difficult to make the NFL schedule. That should never be an issue.
It's the Commanders that have the off week.
Yeah, so the Commanders next 2 games in a row against the Giants, and the first one ends in a tie. I joked about the Giants being inspired by the World Cup and playing for the draw when they punted away instead of going for it when they were inside of Commanders' territory late, but they get the stop, and then it was Kayvon Thibodeau goes unblocked, almost a safety, sacks Heineke.
Yeah.
They're down at the 1. They get the ball back with a chance. I thought that the officials missed a blatant offsides when they were spiking the ball quickly. The Commanders, the entire right side of the line jumped over before the snap happened on the snap, on the spike. That should have been 5 yards closer. So it was a 58-yard field goal from Gano that missed short. Add 5 yards to that, I think it's
probably
good.
Right there, yeah.
It's probably close, but maybe good. Look, I thought that was a big miss no one's talking about on that offsides. They could have done a better job of getting a little bit closer with Daniel Jones and the Giants late. But it is a weird feeling. We're here at 6th and Peabody getting ready for an NFL postgame show, Hutton, and I'm watching on the outside big screen, and there's people around watching that game. And when that kick falls short, you just kind of sit there just like the people at MetLife Stadium.
That's it?
What do we do now? And there was
we
like
cheer?
a little bit of like muffled boos.
There's a groan.
And then they just kind of, you see people, Giants fans saying, well, guess it's better than a loss. That's sort of the reaction. Well, I guess that it's not a loss, though, right?
It does set up.
Very weird.
It does set up for them, though, the December 18th game, right? Where if one of those teams loses, then it's a must-win scenario. And now you've got a spot now where you get the tiebreaker. You tie game 1, you get the tiebreaker head-to-head game 2. Now, what if they tie again? Then who knows?
I'm here to see it now. With 1 tie, why not go for 2? Same team, 2 ties, same season. It's got to be the first time it's ever happened. If that takes place.
The Detroit Lions have won 4 of their last 5 games. The only loss is to the Bills on Thanksgiving Day by 3. And in 3 of those 4 wins, they've scored 31 points or more. The Lions are playing really good football right now. And they blow out Jacksonville 40-14. And they're going to play a factor in the overall playoff seeding because now they have a couple of games coming up on the schedule where they will face the Vikings, and they also have the Jets. And the Lions right now are one of the hottest teams playing. Their offense, they can move the football well, and defensively, at least they're better than what they were through the first half of the season. Glenn's defense is somewhat improved, and they're getting some solid play from some young players, some rookies. Chad, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
I hate to say that about a team that I don't think is actually going to make the postseason, but they're trending in the right direction.
I was on with Dan Dockich on Don't At Me earlier today, and he asked about Dan Campbell and the Lions. Here's what impresses me. Hutton, you brought up Mike Tomlin and the Steelers as this example. You know they're not going to quit.
Right.
Even if their playoff hopes are gone, they're working on a new quarterback they hope is the franchise QB. They're not going to stop, and the product of that is they've won the last 2 games. Dan Campbell, a year ago, they were 3-14, but they won all 3 of their games in December or January. They didn't quit. They had nothing to play for down the stretch.
And they had close games that they lost early,
and
too.
They won a few games down the stretch, lost another really close one against Atlanta a year ago. Could have been 4 wins down the stretch.
Well,
and
didn't they lose the game to the Ravens where Tucker hit that 64-yarder or whatever on them late?
That was in September, yes. 19-17 loss to Baltimore.
But again, they were bad last year, but they were losing tight games in the fourth quarter.
13-10. They
a
had
lot
a
like
tie.
the Vikings.
They had a 16-all tie with Pittsburgh in that. 16-14 loss. 13-10. 19-17. They had some close losses, but he kept them together. So for all the jokes about biting kneecaps and what Dan Campbell and his staff may be schematically, he does have a group of guys that seem to keep playing for him. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good baseline start for what you want. This is not a team that's quitting. And they're showing that now for a second straight year. There's just more wins to go with it. Now the Lions are at 5-7 on the season.
Yep.
Jacksonville looked terrible.
Meanwhile, 1 step forward, 2 steps back for the Los Angeles Chargers. They're the team and I don't think it was hard to figure out. They're the team that just doesn't want to claim a playoff spot. They're outside looking in, and really it's down to them and probably the Jets in the AFC for those that can really battle for the 7th spot. But Chad, the Chargers have had so many opportunities, and we mentioned last week this was one of those must-win games. There were only a couple of them I felt like going into Week 13. I felt like the Chargers needed this one. A division matchup, team they've already won against back in Week 1. They've got to keep pace as they begin the stretch run now for a wild card berth because they're not winning the division. And they're just not capable of coming up with those clutch plays when they matter. Meanwhile, all of a sudden, Josh McDaniels has won 3 straight games in Vegas as the head coach. Davante Adams looks like the best wide receiver in football with Carr delivering the football to him. And his work, Davante Adams against the AFC West in 5 games against the division. 37 catches, 684 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's averaging against the division 140 yards per game. And he scored at least once in every division game so far. I mean, the guy is just virtually unstoppable. And when they throw him the football in the end zone, he is making some great grabs. He's fun to watch. Meanwhile, they're not getting that same type of play. I will say this, though. Game was on the line late, and the Chargers needed to go find points, and somehow on 4th down, you could see the talent and the tease here. Herbert somehow fits a pass in to Allen that is just remarkable for a score. And Allen's like chirping back and forth to Vegas fans, and they tie the game at 20. And then here come the Raiders against that Chargers defense. And it's still the Chargers defense that is holding them back when it matters most because Herbert and Allen actually came up with a massively clutch play to tie it. You could say, well, they shouldn't be in a tie game late. It's unfortunate because I feel like the Chargers are very talented, and they're probably looking at a new head coach next year because of it.
Well, and here's a lesson for all you kids out there that think that you can't have success if things are going against you. All it took for the Raiders to win 3 straight was their quarterback to break down in tears in a post-game press conference and start crying, and for reports to start to leak out that while the Raiders want to fire Josh McDaniels, they can't because they don't have enough money and they've promised him too much. The moment those 2 things happen, they're 3-0, and Davante Adams is just going silly game after game. So, look, success can happen for any of you, too, if it can happen for the Raiders that way. Really a crazy turnaround, though, for that team.
Yeah, and then Vegas
because it looked like it was only going to go towards are they going to win a game in the last month of the season? And now suddenly 3 in a row.
And they're getting great play on all 3 phases, which means they're very difficult to beat right now. But it starts with the star power, and those guys are delivering.
It's like the girl who wants to get out of the ticket that says she just fake cries to the officer to get out of it.
Carr pulled that.
Maybe Derek Carr is now on to something that I'm not saying he faked the crying.
Right.
But when in doubt, just cry.
Waterworks.
If you show your emotion, that locker room will respond. It worked for Tim Tebow in college. He would cry when he needed to, got the team going, and now Derek Carr, same thing.
Maybe Derek Carr's cry speech is going to be on the wall like it is in Gainesville.
I think this is a lesson for you, Jeff Saturday. You need to start crying more in front of the media. That's what's going to turn this Colts team around.
Yeah, I don't.
33 points in the 4th quarter they gave up last night.
I'm not sure he could do anything about those fumbles and turnovers.
33-zip 4th quarter for the Cowboys.
At one point, I was at the CBS affiliate here in town, Chad. I'm watching this game. I'm going, is Dallas really going to lose this game? Are they really going to lose this game?
Do people watch that game in the 4th quarter? I mean, I love football as much as the next person.
Yeah, they do.
But you are insane unless you have $5,000 riding on that game. When that thing gets to 2 scores in the 4th quarter, I am checking out. I am going to the latest Netflix show. I'm watching anything
they may have checked out after that.
Colts Cowboys.
They may have checked out after that. But
I mean, if you're not a Colts or Cowboys fan and you stuck through that entire game without having a ton of money on that game, hit us up on Twitter, OutKick360. Hit us up on the YouTube page. I want to hear from you and understand your rationale. Do you not have any other entertainment options available to you? Even a good book. I can give you a reference if you want one. If you stuck through the entirety of that game. I get watching Sunday Night Football regardless of the matchup in hopes that it's going to be a good game and because it's the NFL and it's Sunday Night Football and their primetime package. But if you set start to finish with no money on that game and not a fan of one of those two teams, my hat's off to you.
What was it, 22-19?
And I want to hear from you.
22-19 or 21-19. And then all of a
They
sudden,
failed to get the 2-point conversion that would have made it 21-all. And then the wheels completely fell off.
Then they just started turning it over.
54-19 was the final.
Yeah.
Because, it was 33-0.
Coming up, we'll update you on the injury report from across the NFL as coaches have been delivering their Monday press conferences. Also, there is a free agent visitor happening right now in Dallas. That's next on OutKick 360.
Two teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side or went around to go to the front side of this other house. And my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly what happened was it was the wrong house. And when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Sutter City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, their gear, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs and shot. I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway. And I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, under nods to not being able to see anything. It obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but it wrecked several things. But, and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off. So I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening. So I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
The big injury news across the NFL today. Jimmy Garoppolo done for the year with a broken ankle, so Brock Purdy is the quarterback. Mr. Irrelevant becomes very relevant for the San Francisco 49ers. No team has ever won a Super Bowl with a quarterback that started third on the depth chart back in September. And Brock Purdy looked fine yesterday against the Miami Dolphins defense. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson is day-to-day with a knee issue. John Harbaugh is saying it's I think the way he phrased it was less likely that he would play against the Pittsburgh Steelers this coming week. Those are the two big quarterback concerns. Meanwhile, Odell Beckham Jr. visiting with the Dallas Cowboys today. That's after he's had visits already with the Giants and Bills over the last several days. Free agent visits, but he's not working out. This is just preliminary talk. And Jerry Jones said after the game last night, that they're going to do everything in their power to make it work with Odell Beckham as a Dallas Cowboy if they can get it done. Of course, finances matter, but also they want to make sure he's healthy, and all of those things need to come relatively soon in order to get ready for a postseason run.
So is he just waiting till the last possible minute to join a team for the playoffs? Is that the goal now, or is it his desire to sign quicker and teams are slow playing it?
No, I think he is making his decision very soon, I think this week. And as long as he is medically cleared, he's good to go. I think this has just been a process for him to get back from that ACL issue, which took place in the Super Bowl.
So it's a health deal.
Yeah, I think the timing of it, though, is working out in his favor right now. Where this has been planned for a couple of weeks, these free agent visits, but it's more like surface. I guess it's more than surface level. It's not like he's going out running routes, and there's a backup quarterback that's also trying out for the team that's in there to throw passes to him. He's not doing that yet. So I guess if you're in, you want your doctors to clear him, and then you kind of know what you're getting. Honestly, though, Chad, I think it's better if Dallas doesn't get him.
Yeah, where would you go if you were Odell Beckham Jr.? Options.
I would go to Dallas or Buffalo of those options. But I think it's better if Dallas doesn't get him. They need to be run-oriented, not pass-focus. And with Tony Pollard now as the lead back and Ezekiel Elliott scoring every week, I would focus more on the rushing attack. But, again, Dallas is going to be Dallas because Jerry's going to spin. Mike Bratton next.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Final hour, Monday edition. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network, streaming live at OutKick.com, OutKick 360. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Been discussing a lot of college and NFL headlines, and we'll continue to do that over the course of the next hour. Coming up, we'll take a look at the New Year's Six bowl matchups. That includes Tennessee and Clemson and some other really strong matchups on paper. We'll try to rank them in anticipation. That's straight ahead. Right now, though, SEC discussion and news and notes with SEC Mike. Michael Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast. We subscribe to it. You should, too. And last he joined us was at SEC Media Days. A lot has happened between July and December. Mike, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
Hey, boys. Thanks for having me. As always, I really appreciate this opportunity.
So, Mike, I think one thing that has not changed from SEC Media Days to now is your impression of Will Levis at Kentucky and him as an NFL draft prospect. I'm with you. I've just never really seen it. I see some of the physical tools, but some of the intangibles of playing the position and not throwing it to the opposition and bad plays the worst time, that continued for Will Levis, but it's pretty clear there was a scapegoat this season, and it was not Will Levis. It was the guy who got fired.
Right. And I never like to pile on these players, so I won't go too hard on him. But, I just call it like I see it. And all that buzz was based on I believe a CBS report, not even like a credible NFL insider or anything, but that he had one line, had Will Levis as the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft. And he basically said, well, somebody's got to emerge. And that's what everybody ran with. And that's why he got all this hype and everything. I've heard from NFL evaluators say Will Levis is a solid prospect, maybe a second rounder, maybe a third rounder, but first overall, that was just ridiculous. And he's had 2 years to show it in the SEC, and he is what he is. As a solid player, I don't think he's going to be the franchise player in the NFL.
Mike, were we a regulation loss away from Nick Saban getting what he wanted in his pitch for Alabama to be in the playoff? A regulation loss for TCU? I
hope not, because I don't think Nick Saban and his Alabama program had no business being in the college football playoff. I mean, the thing that and I'm a Tennessee grad, so I got to put that out there. But the thing that didn't make any sense to me during any of this playoff discussion was just overlooking Tennessee and immediately going to Alabama, and that made no sense. I mean, you guys have made the point for about 3 weeks now, but the resumes are they don't even match. Tennessee beat Alabama. Why Tennessee was in that discussion, I have no idea. But I don't even think Tennessee deserved it. So Tennessee should not have been in the discussion at the end of the day after losing to South Carolina in the fashion that they did. Alabama had no business being in the discussion. And I think Ohio State's just fortunate that no one else emerged. Southern Cal certainly had their opportunity. And once again, Lincoln Riley can't get it done when it really counts.
Mike, what'd you think of the media tour that Nick Saban went on Saturday afternoon and evening after TCU lost? I get that if you're hosting a show or you're on a game, if Alabama's Nick Saban is offered up to you, you probably don't turn it down and say no. But it struck me as desperate and a very odd decision for him to go on all of these shows at that time to publicly petition for his team and against other teams. I thought it was a bad look. What'd you think?
I thought it was pathetic. And I'll tell you right now, I was waiting to hear from Coach Saban. I thought maybe he'd come on my show. Not that I have any pull, but my God, yeah, you're right. He was on every show talking about the point spread. Last time I checked, Alabama was favored to beat Tennessee. They were favored to beat LSU. Didn't get that done. Huge favorites over Texas and Texas A&M. Nearly lost those games. Certainly could have lost both of those. So don't throw the point spreads. If we're just going to go based on point spreads, let's just put Alabama, Ohio State in the playoff from week one. We'll just skip them. They don't have to play any games. They can go 6-6, sit all their starters because that's based on reputation. It's based on brand. It's based on recruiting. And the college football playoff needs to be, you got to earn it. You got to earn it what you do on the field. And flat out, Alabama did not earn that opportunity this year. And heck, I don't even think they earned it back in not the 2020 season, but the previous national championship run where Tua made the incredible pass. Their best win was on the road against Mississippi State. They got whooped in the Iron Bowl by Alabama. Auburn they were on their way to the playoff. They lost to Georgia in the SEC championship game. And for some reason, we put in Alabama because they just got whooped by Auburn, but Auburn didn't get it done in the SEC championship. So there was some fear on my part that Brand was going to win the day. Once again, I'm just glad it didn't.
So Josh Heupel today wins SEC Coach of the Year as voted on by the media. I've not seen the voting breakdown on this. I think he was a pretty clear winner, but there's some good options. Shane Beamer getting to 8-4 late in the year. Brian Kelly winning the SEC West in year one at LSU after their start, and Kirby Smart going undefeated in the SEC, also a good contender.
Jimbo won his last game, too.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Jimbo Fisher, all that perseverance to win that last game to get to 5-7. But in all seriousness, Mike, was there anyone in your mind that was close to Josh Heupel in this award? And you may have a vote, I don't know. But if not, who would get that second place vote behind Josh Heupel?
Well, honestly, I vote Kirby to be SEC Coach of the Year. And I understand I got no problem with Josh Heupel being SEC Coach of the Year. What he's done in the 2-year span is just incredible. Short of Nick Saban and Urban Meyer coming into Florida and Alabama, respectively, and getting those teams to the height of college football in a 2-year span. And, aside from those, I can't think of one similar. And Josh Heupel doesn't even have the talent those two walked into. So no problem, Josh Heupel winning it. But I just can't look past that South Carolina loss. And it's not just losing the game. It's the fashion you did. It was embarrassing. College football playoff on the line. And you basically no-showed. And I don't care what anybody says. That was coaching. They were poorly coached in that South Carolina game. You could make the case. Every road trip in the SEC at night, that's difficult to win. I get it. But I just can't overlook that. So Kirby, what he's been able to do, again, we don't give this award for 2-year spans, but all the losses, 15 draft picks, 13 players, I believe is the number to the transfer portal. This is a team that just came in hungry, and in a year of chaos in college football, Georgia is basically the only team here. Michigan, you could throw them in, but they only had about 2 tough games they had to play, where Georgia, week in, week out, they showed up. I think Kirby deserves some recognition, and I'm fine not giving it to him because he was, everyone picked them to win the East. He's got one of the best rosters in the country. I get it, but still, my vote would have been to Kirby Smart this year.
SEC Mike with us. Mike Bratton, a host of That SEC podcast. Bowl season is very difficult to predict because it's about which teams want to be there And now with the opt-outs and everything else, who knows? Transfer portal, who knows? Again, it's difficult. Looking at the SEC slate, though, Mike, I don't know who's playing quarterback for Florida. They're taking on Oregon State. Missouri and Wake Forest just seems very bland. Arkansas, Kansas is interesting, but I don't know which Arkansas team's going to show up. Meanwhile, Kentucky's in the Music City Bowl again against Iowa in a rematch from last year in a New Year's Six Bowl. I know the Wildcats don't want to be here. There's more unsatisfying matchups to me this year than great matchups on paper.
Right, and you mentioned the Music City Bowl, Kentucky, Iowa. I believe the over/under is something ridiculous, like 50 points, and it's already been bet down. So,
Let's
move
not
a
the line
lot
again.
of points.
Yeah,
that's going to be you got to be a diehard to be down there for that one. Florida, you mentioned they're playing the number 14 team in the country, Oregon State. They only got 12 days to get in 15 practices, and like you said, Anthony Richardson's off to the NFL. Their backup quarterback, I'm sure you covered it. He's in legal trouble. He's no longer on the team. So I don't even know who in the heck Florida's going to have to play quarterback, like you said. So that seems like a lock, but you just never know with these bowl games, man. I mean, I remember last season, South Carolina was going up against North Carolina, and the storyline was North Carolina's quarterback, who went on to become an NFL draft pick. He's playing. So, hey, the Tar Heels are going to roll this 6-6 Shane Beamer team, right? No, it was like 28-7 right out the gate. South Carolina dominated. So bowl games are already difficult to predict. And with the opt-outs, with all these things going on behind the scenes, NIL, transfer portal, I mean, they're just impossible to predict. Even the marquee games, Tennessee and an Orange Bowl, it sounds like some of their players are considering an opt-out. And this is the biggest game of their lives. I can't believe players wouldn't want to play in it.
Yeah, and just mentioning the other good matchups, let's mention South Carolina, a chance to finish the season with Tennessee, Clemson, and Notre Dame as wins. That's remarkable considering what we've seen from this offense prior to this stretch. And now Shane Beamer, I mean, I don't know how much you buy into momentum going into an offseason based on how much rosters turn over. But what a wild ride it's been, and what can this mean for Shane Beamer's program moving forward, Mike?
Well, I think it's huge, and not necessarily having to win. I mean, obviously a win would cap such a great end of the season, but based on what I'm hearing, Spencer Rattler, Marshawn Lloyd, their outstanding receiver, Juice Wells, who had emerged late in the season, they were all planning on not coming back. But you beat Tennessee, you beat Clemson, going into this bowl game. Now they're all leaning to coming back. So South Carolina, the momentum continues to build. The Gamecocks were one of the most active teams in the transfer portal last offseason. I look for that to continue this season to shore up those deficiencies. And hey, it's great for the Gamecocks. I think it's terrible for guys like Hugh Freeze that are coming into Auburn year one. I mean, they're going to expect in 2 years, you got to be competing for SEC titles. And it's not just Auburn, it's all across college football. Josh Heupel was just another example we covered. But there's no time for these coaches to get it right. You either get it right out the gate, or we're already looking for the next replacement. But hey, with all this money flying around, I don't think anybody really cares about that.
Should Florida fans be nervous about Billy Napier, given this first season, given everything going on around the program, or was this just simply the necessary step in order to purge some of the problems in the program and start anew in year two?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, you got to think back. They were the last team to beat South Carolina, and they didn't just beat them. I believe the score was 43-6. The only score South Carolina got was a fake punt pass. So, I mean, they completely obliterated South Carolina. They would have been coming towards the tail. Had they beaten Vanderbilt, which is incredible to say.
Yeah.
I think Florida, you can make the case, is one of the hotter teams in the country, but they didn't. And at that same time, they booted about 4 or 5 players from the team, including one of their best players, Brenton Cox. And, I think the writing was on the wall. I think divided locker room, to say the least, but I think that's what we're going to get with more NIL era. We just saw the announcement, Anthony Richardson off to the NFL. I see the tools, but I don't think he's got any business in the NFL. He can't be consistent in college football. I wish him the best, but I think he should have come back for another year. Again, maybe that's an indictment on Billy Napier. His recruiting is off the charts, though. So, I mean, like I was saying, I mean, you look at their schedule next year. They only got 3 SEC home games, and they'd have to go to Utah this year instead of hosting Utah. So, I mean, if they go 6-6, yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be on the hottest seat in America. But if he continues to recruit well, I could see them turning it around. But I mean, it's a complete unknown. And again, Florida, you talk about a fan base that doesn't have any patience, particularly for a coach that wants to play every game close, loves to run the ball, play defense, which they didn't play this year. It kind of seems like a weird mix there. They're trying to do Alabama, Georgia light over there, but off to a rough start year one.
And we talked about momentum when it comes to South Carolina. Tennessee laid an egg defensively against South Carolina. They did bounce back and beat Vandy 56-0 after Vandy had won 2 straight conference games. Now they get Clemson, Mike, and you look at this matchup. There's a lot to play for Tennessee. A chance to get to 11 wins, a chance to beat a team they're going to go head-to-head with in recruiting year after year with this Clemson team. But Joe Milton, how big is this game for him? You want to talk about momentum and having excitement going into an offseason. How important is it, or not important, for Joe Milton to go out and show something big in this game against a good defense, a really good defense that Clemson has?
I mean, it's huge. And, you know, I would not be surprised at all if Tennessee is, not that I've necessarily heard this, but you got to be shopping for a quarterback, I would think, via the transfer portal. And this is just a new era of college football. If Tennessee just won 10 games, if they regress to 8 next year, people are not going to care that Joe Milton, they gave him a shot. Fans they demand excellence now. The next step is to beat Georgia, to win the SEC East. And just based on what I've seen so far, Joe Milton can't get that done. Now, maybe he changes my mind in the bowl game. Maybe he looks like, the player they anticipated him being last season. But yeah, he's got a lot on his shoulders here. This is paramount. And I realize Tennessee's got a 5-star quarterback coming in that everybody loves. I'm told Lane Kiffin, he believes he's the number 1 prospect in the country. So, and we all know Arch Manning was out there. So, yeah, Tennessee's getting a good one. But can you realistically win the SEC with a true freshman quarterback? I don't believe that you can. I think Tennessee, if Joe Milton does not get it done against Clemson, who they're also on their backup quarterback now, although their backup may be a lot better than their starter for Tennessee, unfortunately. But if Joe Milton doesn't show them something in this game, I think you got to move on, because the expectations are only rising at Tennessee. And I just don't think you can go into a season with Joe Milton as your starting quarterback if your aspirations are to win the SEC.
SEC Mike with us on OutKick 360. I preface this by saying it sounds ridiculous, but I'm asking because I've seen Ohio State against Michigan and I saw Michigan against Georgia. Will Georgia face a better test in the playoff or in the SEC championship game against LSU?
I think in the playoff game, no doubt. I think Jane Daniels was banged up. LSU, I mean, that team was limping in. That was one of the most disappointing SEC championship games that I can recall, and it had to do with them dropping that game in College Station to arguably the worst team in the SEC. So that all the luster was off that game. Georgia was a team on a mission. I think they still will be, but I think the only way to beat Georgia is to outscore them. And I think Ohio State's got the tools to potentially get that done. Georgia at times this season has failed to get it done, executing in the red zone, punching the ball in. They certainly got it done in the SEC championship game. That's why it was a blowout. But you got to outscore them. And I know Stetson Bennett's getting all this Heisman love. I mean, that's kind of a joke to me. I mean, he's a very, very good player. But, I think C.J. Stroud could potentially outscore him. So this may be their toughest game. I think Michigan, I don't think they have a chance, and certainly not TCU against Georgia.
Yeah, but I don't know if Ohio State can win playing the finesse style that they play against Georgia. And I say that because I've seen Michigan beat the crap out of them the last 2 times I've seen them play up front in the trenches, and Georgia's going to do that because Georgia did it to Michigan a year ago.
Right. Well, I mean, you got a good point, but I think most people look at Georgia, they think you need turnovers, you need a low-scoring game.
Yep.
I go the exact opposite. Look what Bryce Young did to them in the SEC championship game a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
He threw for 400-plus passing yards. Of course, he had the great Jamison Williams. Ohio State's got some of those guys. So I think that's the only recipe to beat Georgia. And the bad part for Ohio State is Georgia's got the best defense in the SEC. So It sounds simple, but it's incredibly difficult But I think that's the only path to doing it. You got to outscore them. You got to go score for score. And at the end of the day, can Stetson Bennett get that done? He's MVP SEC championship game. He was MVP of the national championship game. He steps up in big moments, but I think that's the only way to beat Georgia.
And Chad, we mentioned this last week, but had we not seen Tennessee's offense get stopped by Georgia's defense already, I would be hyping up this matchup so much more with Ohio State.
Yeah, and I said it earlier today. In fact, Marvin Harrison Jr. could be an X factor in this game, but there's also a chance Georgia's DBs are just so good they can just body them in this game the way they did Tennessee's DBs. I do want to ask one about Hugh Freeze to you, Mike, and him at Auburn. Hugh Freeze never got Ole Miss to the SEC championship game, but no Ole Miss coach has done that. They're one of two teams never to go to Atlanta in the SEC championship out of the West. Here's my question. Does he win the SEC West at any point at Auburn? Is that something that's going to happen with Hugh Freeze in that division now that he's on the Plains?
No. And Hugh Freeze, it's kind of hard to be impartial because I think he's just kind of a scumbag, if I could say that on the air.
You can say that,
years.
yes. It's fine to say those words for sure.
But, hey, the wild card, I think, with Hugh Freeze, obviously, we all know the transgressions getting kicked out of the SEC. You got to believe he's going to be a man on a mission, and that's the wild card. He recruits like crazy. Now what he was doing at Ole Miss is legal, obviously, so he'll get the talent there. I think Auburn will be better. But at the end of the day, I mean, he was a losing coach in the SEC. A lot of people overlook the fact. He beat Alabama twice. Well, he lost to Vanderbilt twice. He had a 10-win team at Ole Miss. He lost to Memphis that year. So he's a good coach. I think he's a little bit overrated. I think he's a poor man's Gus Malzahn is what he really is. So, no, I don't think he's this amazing coach. But and the fact, which I know we're moving away from divisions fairly soon here in the SEC, but having to go against Alabama, having to go against Georgia on an annual basis, that makes that one of the toughest jobs in the SEC, if not the country. So why do I have faith that Hugh is going to get that done? I think LSU is just going to keep getting better. If Texas A&M wises up, fires Jimbo, or at least hires a competent offensive coordinator, they're going to be in the mix every year. So, no, I think it's an uphill climb for Auburn, but it would surprise me if I'm wrong. I mean, like I said, he's going to be very hungry, very motivated to prove a lot of people wrong, but he's just part of this good old boy network down there in the SEC, and that's the only reason he's got the job at Auburn right now.
He's the host of That SEC Podcast, SEC Mike. Michael Bratton has been our guest. Mike, let everyone know where you're recording, I know, multiple times a week because I get the update on my phone. When's the next one drop?
Yeah, definitely. Every morning we put it out at 5 in the morning, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that jazz. Highest rated SEC show on the Apple Podcast app and Spotify. So check us out. We try to put one out every day during the season and during the off season when we can.
Good work, man. We appreciate the visit, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely.
SEC Mike has been our guest. Always great to catch up with him. Coming up, we'll dive back into some college football discussion, coaching movement, including the Tennessee offensive coordinator who's now at South Florida. And we'll discuss goalish and expectations moving forward for that program and for Heupel's offense, which, I mean, should be plug and play for the next play caller / coordinator, but we'll see. Plus, we'll give you the injury report from Monday Night Football, and the Manning cast is legit tonight. That's next on OutKick 360.
Coach Dan Mulling is joining us tonight, talking about the CFB rankings that are out, Championship Saturday that is coming up. Happy to have him join us on OutKick. Coach, let's get into it with the rankings that came out this past Tuesday. And we look at the top three. I think we can all agree on the top three. For USC, right, they slide right in after the win this past weekend. They're sitting in a prime spot going into the championship Saturday against Utah. Ohio State 5. So let's break down the first 5 to me. Do you think that they got it right numerically, just putting Georgia at 1, Michigan 2, or does it really matter right now?
Well, I think it gets tricky, and I think they've left themselves some opportunity. I think you could have easily gone Michigan at 1 just because of the quality of win. If you look at the great win right now, Georgia's great win over Tennessee. They were a great team. They won at home, won pretty convincingly, and that's their only top 10 win. Now, if you look at the big picture thing, I guess Michigan you can throw out. They won at Ohio State against a great team, equal team. But they also won against Penn State, who the committee seems to value extremely high. So I think you could easily make the argument to have put Michigan at number 1. And I think they could still flip it after this weekend with 1 and 2. I think that's a pretty easy sell right there. TCU at 3, I think is very easy. I think TCU's in no matter what. Even if they lose, I think they'll still make the playoff at this point. And that gets you then down to 4 and 5, which in thinking about it, in reality, you could have easily gone with Ohio State at 4 because you're giving them credit for the Penn State win, and you're giving them credit for if you're going to go that way, you put them in the categories. Okay, let's compare USC then Ohio State 4 and 5, the teams you're next to. That you give them, they had they both had a Notre Dame win. USC has a loss to a Utah team who's just outside of the top 10, where Ohio State's loss is to a number 2 team. The Ohio State, again, I think Penn State's ranked way too high, but if the committee's going to put them there and you go through the reality of it, Ohio State probably should be at 4. Now, that being said, the win this weekend by USC, to me, over a Utah team, which is the only team that beat them, would then jump them over Ohio State, and that would solve some of your problems. So I think they just honestly, it's done out of convenience, because I think if you really think of it, I think you really could have gone Ohio State 4, USC 5, but then the convenience of it is. Why have to flip them after they win their championship, which would be easy to do, but they don't even have to worry about that.
Would the biggest thing would be, okay, USC winning the Pac-12 championship. Okay, now we can slide them into 4, even with Ohio State that maybe could have been at 4. Would that have been like the way to go? Like if they were trying?
I think they could have easily done it. I think they just probably said, hey, why even cause the headache? Put USC at 4. If they win, they get to stay there. If everybody wins out, nothing changes. If one of those, if USC loses, it's easy. Ohio State's the team we're picking to replace them. And then I think TCU's a lock. Now would TCU go to 4 and Ohio State to 3 possibly? But I think TCU's a lock.
From 6th and Peabody, OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Jamie Chadwell. Last year he's being mentioned. 2 years ago he's been mentioned for SEC jobs. Lands at Liberty. Liberty about to join Conference USA. And Chad, I don't know how I feel about this.
I don't either. It feels like a lateral move to me.
Yeah, but it's rare that yeah, exactly. It's rare that you see a lateral move that's this level.
It's not a no-brainer you leave Coastal Carolina for Liberty.
And both are on the same plane.
I'm sure
as far
some
as,
Liberty alum is watching this right now and just losing their mind and going to tell us about all the benefits of Liberty. But I just don't see it.
Maybe I'm not giving Liberty their credit, but Coastal Carolina is just as relevant to me based on where they've been in recent years.
Them
Due
just
to
as
him,
relevant.
yeah, right, yeah.
I mean, they've been ranked in the college football playoff ranking. I mean, I don't see it. I thought Jamie Chadwell was a guy that would take the step up to, if not an SEC job, a Big 12 job, a Louisville, a Cincinnati, that
Cincinnati,
type of job.
Georgia Tech,
We're going to talk about
Colorado,
those two jobs, but yeah, this surprised me. South Florida, he was mentioned at South Florida and interviewed. We're going to get to who they hired, but this surprised me. And then Coastal, man, it is impossible to avoid. When you're taking another job, your team is going to lay an egg.
Yes.
In their conference championship. That's what Hugh Freeze loses
and there's
badly
no way to
New
keep
Mexico
it quiet.
State at the end of the year.
There's no way.
You got Coastal Carolina getting housed in their conference championship. No way to keep it quiet. There's just nothing. What can you say? If you're a coach leaving for another job, if you worked hard to recruit guys to your school and then to coach them, we all understand outside looking in, but it cannot be easy if you're 18 to 22 years old and you're hearing this news or you haven't been told about it and you're reading about it to go out.
It ties in with Dilfer. Dilfer was worried about he was coaching in a high school state championship game and word got out he was going to UAB.
Luckily, they're just so talented. I don't know that it was going to matter. Yeah, they were going to go out there and win no matter what. But no, it's a difficult spot. But I am surprised Chadwell, this is his next move. I thought it would be a low-level SEC job, another Power 5 job, maybe at the lower levels, but it would not be a Coastal Carolina to Liberty.
Yeah. Again, it's odd. I want to know the details behind the scenes there. And then what Coastal Carolina, the up-and-comer, I want to know the next coach that gets to be the next Jamie Chadwell. Because they're in a good spot.
So if I'm Coastal Carolina, going back to our Trent Dilfer discussion, I'm finding someone like that.
Well, that's the trend now, isn't it?
Yeah, go hire the Jeff Saturday. Go hire the name and see if that works. We're going to have to wait to see if Deion Sanders and Dilfer, they work at this level. Deion Sanders moving up to Colorado, Dilfer moving into the group of 5 at UAB. But if this starts to work a couple times, why not take a big swing and try to get some publicity for your program in such a crowded sports marketplace, especially within college football, that you're trying to get scraps from the table of the SEC and Big Ten. Of any publicity you can get, why not go for someone that's going to bring some shine to your program, some spotlight to Myrtle Beach and Coastal Carolina? I'm going that route if I'm them.
Davey Hudson, what are you hearing?
I can think of 4 million reasons a year Liberty was a little bit more enticing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 7 years.
4 million more?
Well, about 3 million more. But 7-year deal averages over 4 million a year. I just don't see Coastal Carolina being able to match that. And so if you're Chadwell, it's another great place. You're going to have an opportunity to continue to build on your resume. I think he was 31-6 in his time at Coastal. So he's a smart man. I think he's going to be successful. I think this is going to work out well for him.
I'm now looking up a notable Coastal Carolina alum to see who could pull that money together to keep Jamie Chadwell there. See if there's any rich alumni of Coastal Carolina that could possibly pull together that money. Hey, how about this? Patrick Swayze went to Coastal Carolina.
Who knew about it?
I mean, he's not alive, so
yeah, right.
I don't know if I'm breaking this news to you, Hutton, right now. And apologies if I am.
This isn't our old trivia
But Patrick Swayze is, in fact, no longer with us. But maybe his estate could pull some money together. The actor Michael Kelly, who plays in House of Cards, Doug Stamper.
Oh, yeah.
Also went to Coastal Carolina. I'm just trying to help out.
I'm sure he could coach football.
I'm trying to help out Coastal here to see what they could have done to keep Jamie Chadwell.
Alex Golish.
Look, that's a lot of money. Colorado's paying $5 million a year.
Yeah.
Liberty's paying $4 million a year. So that's a substantial increase in pay for Jamie Chadwell. That part of it makes sense. From a program standpoint, I'm getting equally as excited about Liberty and Coastal Carolina if all things are equal. If pay is close, I'm about equally as excited about both those programs.
Tithes are much larger at Liberty.
And the answer is not vary with both of those.
What else?
I just wanted to correct myself. It was 31-6 in the last 3 years at Coastal, not overall.
He also had the problem, he got in some NCAA problems at one point before. Because I remember his name was being floated around at Tennessee at one point, and there was a lot of talk about you better look into what he got busted for at the FCS level.
That's trending right now. Look at the hires. You've got Deion, who's walking into a room saying, go ahead and pack your bags, hit the bus, hit the portal. Meanwhile, Hugh Freeze is now the new head coach at Auburn. You've got Dilfer, who recruited great at Lipscomb Academy, and he's now headed to UAB. It's.
I mean, how good would UAB be if he just took the Lipscomb team and moved them up, like a farm system? If he just took all of his guys and put them there, how good are they next year?
This weekend received an offer from UAB. Jeff.
Oh, I'm sure.
Everyone. And Kiffin gets a raise to stay at Ole Miss. Who would have bet on that 3 years ago? That they were going to pony up and pay him the way
Kiffin
Kentucky pays their coach.
Now, to me, is an Ole Miss lifer.
Yeah. And that's fine.
I mean, he's not. I don't think he's leaving for anything, but maybe if he gets another crack at the NFL, which I don't think is going to happen.
What do you think about Golish and here's my thing. Alex Golish is the trend, the hot topic, right, based on the Tennessee offense, and rightfully so. The question I would have is how much does he have over that offense versus what Josh Heupel is running, because it's Heupel's offense. And at no point during the last 2 years have I thought to myself, man, Alex Golish outcoached the defensive coordinator here. It's always been me giving Heupel credit. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I am intrigued, though, to see what he's able to do and how fast it can translate outside of what we've seen in Knoxville. To give him credit, though, Chad, this is a coaching staff that came in and that took over a roster that was not producing wins and more losses. And they've turned that into what is an Orange Bowl team right now against Clemson a year and a half later. So I do want to preface everything by saying, is he immediately going to jump in and run that same offensive style at South Florida? Is that the expectation?
Absolutely.
And is he calling plays?
Yes. I think he's going to have a hand in it.
Was he calling Heupel's offense?
Yes. I think he was calling plays. I think Heupel, it's impossible not to watch Josh Heupel on the sideline with a play sheet over his mouth on offense. He's doing something. I think there's a mix and match. Okay. I think they're talking about it at times and maybe discussing things with each other. Alex Golish, his big help to Heupel was, and I think he learned this at Iowa State, he added to the heavy package of short yardage, especially from last year to this year. He had a big hand in that. And Josh Heupel went out of his way to credit Alex Golish for bringing in a lot of those concepts that saw Princeton fan as a tight end lined up at fullback and them taking snaps under center and doing some different things.
They took what they had and made the most of it.
Right. They morphed that offense, and Golish was a big help with it. But, I mean, you're not hiring Tennessee's offensive coordinator without expecting the exact same offense that Tennessee led the nation with at USF.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is if I'm hiring an offensive coordinator from an offense that's the talk of the nation, I'm expecting that guy to come in and call plays, and I can't tell you what the percentage is on what Heupel was doing versus Golish. I don't think that was ever really known.
No, I'm with you.
And if you're hired for what you do best, you want your guy calling plays. And I'm not saying he's not going to do a good job. I think he will. I just don't know how much credit to give him versus Heupel on what we saw offensively. Because we don't give Heupel we give Heupel the benefit of the doubt on how bad the defense was at times. But when the offense is great, it's Heupel's offense and not Golish's offense. That's all I'm saying. And Golish benefited from that ultimately here.
If Heupel has any say in offensive play calling, which I think he absolutely does, I don't know what the percentage is, but he's calling plays.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe doesn't call all of them, but he's got a big hand in what's going on with operationally with that offense. The install, absolutely, and play calling, absolutely. If that's the case, and you're Tennessee, you just promote Joey Halsley, who's been with them for a long time, who's the quarterback coach, and just keep the thing going. Yeah. I would never think about it, unless it's someone that you really like that's worked with you before, that's doing a lot of the same things, or that can add to the offense. I'm just promoting from within and then hiring someone else to coach a position.
Yeah, elevate and then retool.
Because Halsley at Tennessee, he played quarterback at Oklahoma for Josh Heupel. He's coached with him for, I think, 10, 11 years. Younger guy, but I'm just promoting him. We'll see what he does.
Tennessee, while we're talking Tennessee, they get Clemson in the Orange Bowl as we take a look at the New Year's 6 bowl games. And this is the matchup we wanted, right? With it fresh. This is not Alabama against Clemson in the Orange Bowl, thankfully. This is not one of the matchups where you could get a rematch of, USC and USC gets Tulane here. But you're not seeing the rematch of the Rose Bowl from last year either. Chad, I like what we're getting at the end of this month, turning into January in 2023, with all the matchups here. I'm intrigued by USC simply because what are they going to be invested in versus what Tulane has to win here?
Especially Caleb Williams tweaking his hamstring.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Will Caleb Williams, if he plays, actually put FU to Tulane on his knuckles?
You got to stay consistent.
Of course, the college football playoff is going to be fun. And Alabama, Kansas State is very intriguing because I think part of the reason why Saban's lobbying to get into the top 4 is he wants his team focused and ready as they prepare for their opponent. And that's not hard to do. And now it's Kansas State who is going to be, as the Big 12 champ, they're coming in thinking, yeah, we're going to knock down the almighty Crimson Tide. And this is one of those scenarios where I normally wouldn't buy it. Based on what I've seen from Kansas State this season, I absolutely think, and it's more about what I've seen from Alabama over the last 2 years with the penalties and delay of games and
Kansas State,
dumb mistakes.
This is their Super Bowl.
Yes.
I mean, this is a night. A night. It should be a night. Sugar Bowl in the 11 a.m. in the morning, by the way, is ridiculous. I understand they had to do this because New Year's Day falls on a Sunday and they don't compete with the NFL, but the Sugar Bowl is a New Year's night festival.
Agreed.
That is a traditional bowl game
party
right there next to the Rose Bowl.
It's in New Orleans. Come on.
The Rose Bowl is late afternoon on New Year's Day, and it is evening for the Sugar Bowl
when
on New
I think
Year's
of
Day.
11 a.m. bowl games, I'm thinking of the Belt Bowl, not the Sugar Bowl.
I'm thinking Citrus and Outback going head to head on one of the ESPN family of networks. That's what I'm thinking on 11 a.m. I'm not thinking Sugar Bowl, but Alabama's not going to be motivated for this game. Are you kidding me?
That's what I'm saying.
Those guys, I mean, that program is so damn good that they view themselves as failures for having lost the national championship game a year ago and going 10-2 this year and finishing 5th nationally. Most every other program in the country would pray for the season Alabama had this year, Tennessee being one of them, and they finally got it. And now they're going to play Kansas State, fresh off a win with their backup quarterback, Will Howard. Deuce Vaughn is a handful for anyone. I would bet the house on K-State in this game.
That's
and
I'm
not one to normally bet against Bama, but I think Nick Saban in part is lobbying because he knows with the program he's built, it's going to be very hard to get his players motivated and playing hard and playing well against Kansas State in a Sugar Bowl, which I know sounds crazy because it's the Sugar Bowl, but I like Kansas State in that one. Tennessee's going to have no shortage of motivation against Clemson. I think the same goes for Clemson because now they're playing with a new quarterback in Klubnik. So you got Milton, the backup, versus Klubnik, the new starter. Milton also the new starter, but the backup. Really like that matchup. Mm-hmm. The other one that jumps out to me is I think Utah-Penn State's going to be terrific in the Rose Bowl.
Because Utah –
not a lot of talk about Penn State this year, but, I mean, their 2 losses are to 2 of the 4 playoff teams. And that's it. And Utah gets to a second straight Rose Bowl after going for the first time ever a year ago.
And unlike Ohio State, they want to be there.
Right. And their fans will go.
I'm with you on that. It's going to be good. And I'm intrigued by Tulane. I really am. Because SC, they thought they were in the playoff. And now they're playing Tulane. I would say that about – and it's not a knock on Tulane here. This is just like if you're looking at the New Year's Six and all the opponents and then you're getting Tulane, it just doesn't add up, right? The focus isn't there.
I just want – USC to be close to full strength and Caleb Williams to play in this game because what I hate is Tulane could win a really close game and then even for Tulane people, you're left saying, well, all their best players didn't play. They opted out. So what, is that's a kind of a hollow victory.
The best part about this graphic, though, that we're looking at with all these matchups for the New Year's Six, this is the playoff moving forward. These teams will be represented.
Yeah.
We're not debating on what the best matchups is. We get great matchups weekly with the bye weeks, and they'll be on campus. This is.
And I still look at it from, it's not just the final result in the 12. Those games are going to be great, and we're going to get good matchups. It's that you're going to have 25 to 30 teams in the discussion in mid-November.
Yep.
There's going to be so many scenarios. I mean, think about
Utah
everything that happened on championship weekend.
Yes, Oregon and Utah would be up for debate.
And really the only change
November.
was Ohio State subs in for USC. But think about all the implications with dominoes falling behind those teams.
Ole Miss is in the mix. Now they're not.
Trying to get to 12. It just opens up the door to so many more possibilities and so many more fan bases that are going to be legitimately engaged in their team competing for a national championship. And right now, there's really just a handful of teams that you're actually considering that, even in mid-October. You know, by early mid-October, there's just a handful of teams that's truly looking at it thinking, we can get into the dance. And then you add 8 teams to it, it's going to help everything. I really believe that. I am all for it.
Same. Coming up, we get into Monday Night Football. We'll give you our picks and what we think happens tonight between the Bucs and the Saints. Plus, Dr. Pepper does the right thing after a tie in the SEC Championship Tuition Challenge. We'll fair or foul this coming up on OutKick 360.
Two teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side, or went around to go to the front side of this other house, and my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly, what happened was it was the wrong house, and when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Sutter City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, you know, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, you know, their gear, you know, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs and shot. I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, I mean, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So we ran in, I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, you know, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway. And I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, you know, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, you know, under nods to not being able to see anything. It obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but it wrecked several things. But, and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off. So I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening. So I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
Interesting matchup tonight in a bad division for the NFC South. We'll get to our picks in just a moment for the Bucks and Saints. As we wrap up, though, Chad, the Dr. Pepper challenge for the tuition.
Yeah, this is a championship weekend staple. All the championship games, they get out the sideline reporter. You get the two kids from usually obscure colleges going head-to-head for $100,000 to their respective schools and tuition money. And what happened in the SEC Championship Challenge is something I don't think we've ever seen in this. First off, the chest passes have to go away. But the way they designed this thing is it's so close and you have such little time, it's almost better to throw the chest pass.
Well, they could outlaw the chest pass, though, if they wanted to, and
it
doesn't matter on the time or how close you are.
True. So it was a tie. It ended in a tie. And I think the first round ended in a tie. They went to a second one, ended in a tie. The woman that, if you're watching the show, you saw jumping up and down, excited, she knew that she won. There's some qualifying deal the night before. And if you have a higher score in that, that's the tiebreaker. So she knew she won the $100,000 because of the tie. Well, Dr. Pepper got booed by the fans when they announced a winner because of some previous thing no one saw. Now, before the end of the game, the sideline reporter, David, you know her name? The SEC CBS sideline reporter, new girl. We can find it. I forget her name now. Brunette. I'm just going to keep talking about it until somebody finds it. Either way, sideline reporter later in the game reported, hey, you saw what happened at halftime in the game for the Dr. Pepper Tuition Challenge. Well, we've been informed that Dr. Pepper has decided.
Jenny Dell,
thank you. Has decided to go ahead and give $100,000 to each participant after the tie. That's a big-time statement. It's a lot of money, too. So good for Dr. Pepper for doing the right thing and awarding both participants with the $100,000 tuition check. Yeah, the chest pass thing, I wait for someone to not do it. But it's become so regular.
You have to do it because the other person has a clear advantage if you don't, based on the speed of it.
It's the timing of it. It's the distance, and they clearly practice going into it, where it's easier to grab with the two hands and then chest pass it. Yeah, I don't like it though. I'm with you guys.
Monday Night Football tonight. The Buccaneers are hosting the New Orleans Saints. Believe it or not, the Saints with a win can be a half game back of the division lead. Even though they are 4-8, which is just crazy to think about. Yeah, a half game behind Tampa in the division, and it would put them in a tie with the Falcons, who lost yesterday. I'm not picking the Saints, though, even though the Saints have had great success against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers over the last couple of seasons. This feels to me like the Tampa-Seattle game in Germany, where it looks like a toss-up, but I feel like the better roster ends up winning this game and the better quarterback overall. Brady will make some plays tonight. And the run game, they've got to get the run game going in Tampa. Fournette is returning tonight. They've got White there as well out of the backfield for the pass game. The Buccaneers have only topped 100 yards rushing twice this year. But, Chad, this is the night they're going to need it. And I think it's a close game, but I'm taking Tampa outright on the money line.
I have gone back and forth on this because of that history with Brady versus these Saints, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go big. I'm going to go Tampa minus 3.5 in this game, and I'm going to say Mike Evans scores a touchdown as an anytime touchdown score in a parlay.
Dennis Allen's not a very good head coach, but he is great at scheming up Brady. In these matchups, the Bucs have only averaged 14.6 points per game, and Brady's been sacked an average of 3 times per game. So if they get to him like that, great. I don't see that same consistency from the Saints defense. So again, we're both taking the Bucs. If the Bucs end up losing this, who knows who ends up winning this division?
Hutton,
could be Carolina.
Who's on Manningcast tonight?
Tonight on the Manningcast, Dana White will be on, as well as Robin Roberts and Randy Moss.
Not bad.
Randy Moss, Dana
Not a bad
White,
lineup. Also,
Robin
during
Roberts.
that broadcast, we will know who's invited to New York for the Heisman ceremony. They are announcing during Monday Night Countdown on ESPN.
I'm intrigued by this because you think they get up to 5? You think they invite up to 5?
I hope that's at least 4. I don't want to see a scenario because it's so wide open this year where there's only 3 invited. This seems like a year to have 5.
But even whenever Devontae Smith was the winner, was there only 3 there? That felt wide open too. I don't know. Like normally there's a big separation gap, and if you don't qualify, they're not flying you up. I hope there's 5 because it's wide open and the intrigue would be glorious.
I stopped taking math classes early in college for a reason.
Yeah,
Don't know.
That's why we talk sports each day, 3 o'clock Eastern. Join us tomorrow for OutKick 360.